Welcome to Lisa Rose Q&A. I'm Lisa Rose. You get to ask the questions and I give you the answer, and I think of it as coaching for your soul. So here's my very first question, and it comes from someone who knows me since I've been little, actually, in Pennsylvania. And the question comes from Kevin Dodderer. Hi, Kevin. And he sent me this question through Facebook. So the question that Kevin has for me is, having known you since you were young, I have been wondering what first made you realize you were intuitive, maybe an early childhood experience that sticks out in your mind. And how old were you when you began to realize your gift? Okay, in retrospect, I've had a lot of metaphysical experiences between maybe about the age of kindergarten and let's say 18. And during those years, you know, you often write it off as coincidence and you don't think it's anything too special. Maybe it's just kind of weird. It's not something that I would sort of blurt out during that time frame out loud, you know, having been raised Catholic and also being in an environment that might have thought that I was just a psycho instead of psychic. So it kind of kept it under wraps. But around age 19, I began to connect the dots. But, you know, initially it started out as a whole lot of unexplained signs and symbols and experiences. And I would say the first was in kindergarten, around 4 or 5 years old. I would see these misty figures in my bedroom at night. At the time, it wasn't scary, and I didn't think much of it. I kind of thought that just happened to everybody. And I can remember seeing sort of like a figure, but also sometimes just, it almost looked like puffs of smoke. But they were certainly controlling themselves or itself. They would sort of just glide around the room and meander around me. I'm not even sure they were paying attention to me, but I could definitely see them. And fast forward right to second grade, this was probably the moment when I realized that I had some sensitivity and was clairvoyant. I had these knowings. Like, for example, I went to a school outside of Philadelphia, and I knew what the grade would be on my test before the test was returned to me by the teacher. And by the way, they graded in numbers. It wasn't A, B, C, D, F. You know, it was like 87, 92, 75. And I would know the number before I got it over and over again, which seemed a little bit more than coincidence at the time. And then I had another experience there in the second grade. This girl named Anne used to sit 2 seats in front of me and 1 aisle over. And I could remember taking a test and looking over and seeing a puddle under her chair. And it was a little unusual because none of us had anything to drink. And I glanced over again and it wasn't there. And about 20 minutes later, towards the end of test time, I remember our teacher, I remember her saying, "Anne, oh, you spilled your juice. Let's get you cleaned up." And she went over to her chair and removed her from the room. And I remember looking at the puddle underneath her chair, and it was pee. You know, she was so nervous about the test that she just peed in her seat. And so that's an example of, you know, how I saw it and knew it was coming before it actually happened. And those types of experiences, you know, they continued, you know, here and there, and I didn't really think about it too much, other than, you know, wow. But I didn't really talk about it. Late teens, my first reading with a psychic was in 1977 in Northampton at a dress shop. And it was a man who used to come to this woman's dress shop, and another friend took me there. And I remember taking a cassette tape recorder because I wanted to record it. And I also remember that when I went home and I clicked the tape recorder, I could hear him speaking to me in the beginning, sort of welcoming me, and then when he actually started the reading, all I heard was this white noise. It sounded like shh, you know, and I learned then that oftentimes when there's spirits or spirit guides or other energy forms in the room, they interfere with electronics, and that's still my experience. Sometimes when I'm heading out to do some energy work, my iPhone doesn't work right, or my GPS in my car doesn't function correctly. So I know that there's some sort of a tie there. And I remember in that reading, I wish I would have written things down because I was dependent on the tape recorder. I remember in that reading, though, he said to me, "Do you have any questions?" And I did, and I remember thinking about the question in my mind, and he answered it. And I didn't actually say the question out loud. And then I remember that he asked me a question and his lips weren't moving, but I could hear him and I answered it. I think that was probably like the moment, you know. And I remember he had said to me, you know, you have very strong psychic abilities, and it's something that you could pursue if I wanted to. So I think I was officially afraid. So 1979, a couple years later, this is my intuition that's began to kick into full force. And I was at a party, you know, the partying 70s. So me and this same friend, by the way, were at this party. And I suddenly had this overwhelming urge to leave and to take her home. And so I remember walking over to her and telling her, we have to go. Now, she has witnessed, this is a person who had witnessed some of these abilities of mine over time and believed me and understood that it was real. And she said, okay. And we left, and I dropped her off at home, and I went home myself. And the next day that I learned from her that when she arrived home, she learned that her mother had been in a kitchen fire and was badly burned over probably 30% of her body above the waist, and needed her help. But this was before cell phones. It wasn't easy, you know, to get a hold of somebody at a wild outdoor party right by the landline. So her mother basically had sent the message out, and I received it. So that was the first time that I received what I would call an intuitive hit, trusted it completely, and acted on it instantly. So I wanted to finish answering this question by telling you that around age 28, I had decided I was going to turn off all this intuitive and metaphysical ability that I had, because I was not trained to manage my energy properly. Now I am, but I wasn't then. And I had some really negative experiences, which are totally possible if you're not managing your energy or don't know how to do it. And it scared me and it frightened me so much that I just decided I was going to shut it down. But I didn't turn it back on again until my late 30s. And then I decided, it was in my 40s, that I was going to officially get trained. And that was the best choice that I ever made, because now I'm really good. And I can also manage the energy so that I can control the information that's coming in, when it's coming in, who it's coming in from, so that it serves the highest and best good of the person that I'm working with. So, Kevin, thank you so much for the question. I appreciate it. Love from California, and hello to everybody there in Pennsylvania. Thanks.